the image that I'm going to create is this one. It's for the RedVertex challenge that we have organized with our friends at RedVertex. The image, basically I started out, I had this idea, I wanted to make two megalith structures in the middle of a super busy, maybe even polluted modern city. And I didn't really have any clear idea of what I wanted to do. There were some images that I saw online that I wanted to sort of like imitate, not imitate, but use as a sort of like inspiration, put it this way. So this is the actual model that I've created. These are some of the assets that I have. And we're gonna create this from scratch together. Okay, so I'm gonna save this and then I'm gonna say File, New, General. Now, one thing that it's important is that I've used some assets to create this. And in the beginning, the idea was that the assets I was just going to use to sort of like get a sense of scale and proportion. And the idea is that I wanted to try and model my own tower, but to be honest with you, all the tests that I did, they came out so ugly that I was like, I kept going back to the original model of the assets. The I guess negative thing about these assets is that I purchased this maybe 10 years ago. So I don't even know where you can find them anymore, even though they're great assets. I think I got them somewhere on ArtStation, but I might be wrong. They were very cheap, like $4 or $5. But the problem is that, you know, you get buried by all the assets that people create all the time. But anyway, I'm gonna keep them open for myself, and maybe later I'll try and go on ArtStation and try to find the original assets so that I can post a link, and if you like, you can use these ones for the competition. Otherwise, there are assets that you can download from the actual competition, the assets that our friends at RedVertex gave us. Sorry, I was a little bit weirded out because I could hear myself. I can only hear one channel. Okay, so let me see if there is something that I can do. Audio input. Properties. Okay, let's see if there is any settings that I can change in the audio mixer. Advanced audio properties. Okay, yeah, I can see what it is. Let's see if this fixed it. Audio to mono. Just give me 1 second. We haven't started with the tutorial anyway, so. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's see if this is fixed. Hi, Francisco. Is it fixed? Okay, fantastic. Should be fixed. Okay. So Francisco says that it's fixed. How are you, Francisco? Okay, so let's start already with the actual city, which is actually the most important part, if you ask me. Like, you know, it's needed for me to have that sort of like sense of super large scale. Let me put down the volume a little bit. So I use a plugin which is called OS Maps, which is a a plugin, what is it called? One of those GIS sort of like plugins that allow you to snap a little piece of a map. And so let me show it to you. I'll go to select, and when I click select, it will give you this map that will open up. And so with this map I can simply go to I've chosen a part of the Bronx, I think, somewhere around here before, and I'll do the same thing. I'll say show selection rectangle. I'll change this to something like this. Maybe I don't want to include the park because this is a polluted city, so there is no park. And now what I can say copy. So I'll copy the coordinates. Then I'll go here and say paste. And then I will say import buildings, don't import the water, no forest, no other vegetation, just the roads and paths. And then I say import. This will take a couple of seconds. So you can see my computer is thinking. And here we are. So this is the city that is imported. Now, as you can see, as I scroll in and out, my camera gets cut. This is something that you can fix by expanding the field of view of the camera. So I'm gonna add a couple of zeros because this is going to be a big project. And then I'm gonna drop a plane. In this plane I'm going to scale it up by 100. I guess that's not enough. By 10. Maybe I'll make it even bigger. And eventually what's gonna happen is that I will copy this city a couple of times so that the sense of scale, it's actually bigger. The other thing that I want to do before I continue any further is to place a camera. So Control-Alt-0 for me to place a camera. And as soon as I do this, you'll see that you actually don't see anything, and that's because the camera by default has a very short clipping plane. Hi Angelo, how's it going? So I'm gonna give it a couple of zeros. The camera is now set. I'm gonna select the item and sort of like square out all the measurements. I'm also going to center it to the Y and X axis. Actually, on the X axis, I don't have to really do anything. On the Z axis, this is where you can decide how high you want to have it from the ground. Since I'm going to work with a skyscraper, which I plan to make 1 kilometer high, I think I'm gonna go with a height of 250 meters. And so this will give me sort of like a view from the top, but not too much that, you know, it looks like I'm looking down. It almost looks like I'm looking from another tower inwards. Now, let me just quickly put a passepartout around the camera. So if I go to the camera, I have the viewport display. I can raise the passepartout so that now I know what I'm looking at. Now, by default, my Blender is always rendering 2200 pixel by 1800, and this is because most of my work I put on Instagram, and this is a good resolution for Instagram. I'm glad to hear, Angelo. And another thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to change the focal length of my camera. Currently is 50 millimeters. I'm going to put 110 or something. And that's because this is a good focal length that sort of like flattens out the geometries and make it look like they're bigger. That is actually a good trick if you want to make things look bigger than they appear. So I'm gonna move it back because obviously by making it 110 millimeters, I'm sort of like eating into my field of view. And another thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to start changing these buildings. Now, the advantage of using this plugin is that the models already come with a material for the wall and a material for the roof. So you can keep those separate. Let's texture it so that we can start seeing something. Now, for the texturing, what I'll do, let me open this window down here and change it to a shader editor. I'm going to make a very simple material, no physical properties to it. I mean, some physical properties, but basically when you're working at such scale, you know, and also with the style of illustration that I use, you can get away with a lot of things that are not done the proper way, so to say. I'm gonna click on use nodes because this is a basic material that doesn't use nodes, so this will automatically convert it. Now, can you see the all the settings? I'm gonna hide my video capture because you don't really need to see me. And I'm going to use a facade material for the facades. So I'm gonna open some of my assets, and in environments I have a folder that is just for facades. Where are they? There you go. And I can use a sort of like a generic material. It doesn't really matter because again, you're not gonna see exactly every single detail. And I'm gonna plug it into the base color. Let me see if the viewport shading material preview works in this case. I might actually have to render it because I'm not sure we're going to be able to see it. Okay, let me put a sun in the scene. And I'm gonna have the sun coming from behind the camera. Okay, I don't think I see it. Let me see if by changing the... Yes, okay. So this might be that this model doesn't really have any UVs, obviously, because, you know, we're importing it from a an external server, and probably the automated thing did not make the UVs. Yeah, so this is something to bear in mind. So I'm gonna change the layout from flat to box, and let's play a little bit with the sides. What happens if I say 0.2? It gets a little bit bigger. Okay, great. So I'm gonna say 0.1. And this more or less looks like, I can go even smaller, 0.05. Yeah, it's a little bit better. So now if I get to the viewport, you can start to see that there is some information coming through. Now, obviously, this is all the same and it looks all the same, and so we will have to change a little bit of this. Let's do this. Okay, so I'm gonna select all the buildings and I'm gonna hit the tab key. And then with the wall selection, I'm gonna say, with the wall material selected, I'm gonna click on select. This is going to select all the facades which have the wall material applied. What I'm going to do now is say checker deselect, and I'm going to actually not checker deselect, I'm going to say random, select random, and I'm gonna say deselect 50%. And so this is going to basically deselect 50% of my geometry randomly. And I'm going to say make another material based on the wall, duplicate it, and assign it. Now this material is actually applied already to the geometry. all I need to do for this material is actually just change the type of facade. So in this case, I could use this type of facade to give an example. And this will be automatically applied. And so you see that we start to have a little bit of like a different looks in the facade. I can repeat this exercise and say, select random deselect, and then I can say create another wall material, duplicate it, assign it, and this time I can put a totally different texture. I'll use this one from Shutterstock. And so now we have 3 materials in the scene. Maybe this one it's a little bit too, the color it's too, what do you call it, prominent. I can simply select a hue and saturation node and lower the saturation to something like 0.5 or something. So now that I'm ready with the city, another exercise that I can do to make it look a little bit more interesting is to go and randomly select some of the buildings. And I can actually make random selections here and there. And then say Control L so that it's selected everything that it's connected, and simply delete the faces so that I create a little bit more space so that not everything is so cluttered and squeezed together. And then another thing that I could do is select a couple of faces, 0, and then just move them up, so to create some needle skyscrapers here and there, and to make this a little bit more interesting. Let me delete some more buildings. I think that this is still too dense in a way. Control L, delete faces, 0 to go back. And I like the density of this image. Let me select the roads and the model, and let me Control D, duplicate it, rotate it maybe 90 degrees. Let's see what happens in the viewport. It's looking okay. I'm gonna add a sky into my environment, and I'm going to lower the strength to 0.2 maybe. Yeah, so that it's a little bit more readable. And as you can see, like, we're getting already the sense of like a scale that this city has, yeah? Let me go in and reduce a little bit more the buildings. Control L, delete faces, and then I want to randomly select some buildings and extrude them so to have like some minor scale buildings popping around. There we go. And I feel like the city is still a little bit too small. I'm gonna duplicate this another time and turn it around a little bit more. Then I'll move this plate a little bit backward. Now, another thing that I can do to make this a little bit more interesting from a point of view of the actual texture is to go in with the materials. Let me see if I can find them. There we go. And I can use the same material of the facade to create a bump that we can put in the height and then use into the normal to sort of like give the effect that this is coming out. Maybe one thing that we should do when we do this is to first of all make the texture from color to black and white, and also to raise the contrast. So if I make the contrast, say something like that, this should give a little bit more the impression that, yeah, I think it's fine. Am I looking at the right texture? Facade 01, yes, okay. Good. I can do the same exercise with all the other. Actually, another thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to put the same input inside the roughness, so that this will give me a little bit of reflection where there are windows, you see. Let me copy all these nodes here, copy, and put them inside the other materials. And so normal and roughness. And I'll do it also for the other wall. Control V, put this material here in the normal, and then this one in the roughness, although I'm not sure what's gonna happen because this is a little bit more homogeneous as a texture, but it doesn't really matter. You don't really see it that much anyway, so great. So now the first issues that we are dealing with are the albedo of the horizon that we would have to cover one way or another. So for this, I'm going to create some landscape mesh, which I need to scale up by at least 1,000 times. And I actually need only one piece of landscape that then I can turn around and modify the way that I need. There we go. Scale it up a little bit. And I'll do that again. Turn it around. Then maybe make this a little bit bigger. So we start to get an idea that, you know, there is something else going on at the back. One thing that I want to do, this is something that I always do, especially when working on architecture renderings with my camera. I like to shift it vertically. I don't know, I just like the effect of having a shift lens. But obviously if I do that, then of course I'm gonna go and cut the a little bit the you know, the landscape that I have behind. And so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna probably lower my camera a little bit. What I don't like, what I find very annoying are these situations where, for instance, you know, like you have a building that it's sort of like touching the edge of something like a mountain. So I'm gonna quickly select it and push it down a little bit. And maybe I'm gonna go and look for some tiny buildings. And then I'm gonna move those up. Wanna move another one. Yeah, I think this is coming out nice. Okay, for the mountains at the back, I need to have sort of like a very basic material. So I'm gonna call this mountain. As I told you, you know, we're not gonna really see what's there. So all I need is sort of like a good ground texture that it gives us sort of like an understanding that there is something there. So I'm gonna choose this grass park, plug it into the geometry, sorry, into the material. Now the problem with these meshes from Blender, and you should know that, it's probably a bug, I don't know, is that they don't come with a UV map, and so you have to create it yourself. I'm gonna say UV project from view, and so now you have a proper UV. I'm gonna select the same mountain material, Control L, link materials, and then I'll do the same exercise, UV project from view, and then again UV project from view. There we go. So now I go into the material. As you can see, this is way too big, so I'm gonna say Control T, and then I guess I have to make this selected 50 maybe to make it smaller. Yeah, it is smaller, starts to lose a little bit of the what do you call it, of the definition, but it doesn't really matter because eventually we're gonna cheat this as well. Let me make a black and white material here. A contrast node. And I'm gonna plug this into a bump. I'm gonna raise the contrast a little bit. Maybe that's too much. And I'm gonna make the strength something like 5. This is absolutely not a physical thing, but it's okay. It gives us a little bit more detail, as you can see. And the green is too green. I do not like that, and so I'm gonna mix it, the RGB, with maybe a little bit of gray. I don't know. Yeah, that's good enough. Great. So another thing that I like to do in my images is to put a sky as a picture. So I'm gonna do that. Shift A to say image as planes. And I'm gonna go into my assets, environments, I think it is. No, it's bitmaps and then environments. There we go. And then skies. Then I'm gonna choose a nice sky to put in the background. Could be something like this, doesn't really matter. And then I'm gonna scale this by 1,000 times. Push it, back behind everything. And then I'm gonna scale it up again. Maybe put it up there. And then I'm gonna plug the color input inside the emission. So now that it's a little bit more emitting, so to say. And maybe one thing that I'll do, I'll mix this also with a little bit of white, because it's too prominent right now. Plug it into the emission. Great. Good. Okay, so I would say we have the base right now done of the render. Then we are going to need the towers. Another thing that I would like to do is go on Google Maps. That's one thing that I think it's not that good about this plugin, that you cannot really get the texture of the map. I'm gonna switch to terrain, satellite, there you go. And one thing that I don't want is the labels. So now what I can do, I'll wait until the picture renders. Does it render? No, it doesn't. Okay, so I'm just gonna select a portion of this map, and I'm gonna save it into the folder that I already have. It's I called the other image base. I'm gonna call this base 2. There you go. And then in the plane that I've created, I'm going to create a material called base and Shift A image texture. I'm gonna open the base texture that I just opened, and I'm gonna say Control T, the UV. Actually, this I need to apply the scale to this, and then I'm gonna say texture it 3 times, and this should be enough. And this will give a little bit of extra details to the bottom of this plane. So let me quickly render this because I want to see what it looks like. Yeah, I think it's looking good. It's what it is. I'm satisfied with this. Maybe it's a little bit too dense. I'm gonna do a couple of things here and there to make it look a little bit more interesting. But I would say that, we are getting there in terms of like what I was expecting from this exercise. Great. So I'm gonna go inside the these assets that I have bought. As I was telling you, these are really old assets, and I'm actually going to use this one instead. Maybe I can do something creative with this. I don't know. Let me stop rendering. By the way, do you see Blender handles all this geometry, which is a lot of geometry, and it renders it in real time, and it's super easy for me to, like navigate, and it's relatively stable, knock on wood. Now it's gonna crash. Control V to paste it. Let me see where it is. Okay, so I'm gonna have to scale it up 1,000 times. I'm also gonna reset the rotation, put it up like this. I'm actually going to move the pivot point to the bottom so that every time that I scale it, it will happen from the bottom of the object. There you go. And so now I can actually try and place this somewhere in the viewport so that it looks good. I'm gonna open another viewport. Hey Dujan, what's going on, my man? So nice to see you. So I'm gonna put this right here, scale it up so that it looks massive. And I already like where this is going, like I'm cheating in a way because I've already done the image, and so I know what this is going to look like. But I like this. Actually, I think that to really make it interesting, we should do something like this. There you go. Like this, it looks a little bit better. Then I can scale it up a little bit. And I like this, it's very geometrical, it's very strong. The mountains are starting to get a little bit too prominent for my own taste. So I'm gonna scale them down a little bit. More than this is not needed. And so now the issue that we have to solve is, how we get these towers to look a little bit more interesting. And we can do that by basically work on the materials, right? First of all, let me take a look at the sun, because the sun, as far as I'm concerned, is too high. I would like to have sort of like a more sunrise sort of like look. Yes, and yeah, the sky, it's fine. We'll leave it like this for now. Great. So now I'm gonna create a material for these towers. I can actually, you know, I'm gonna make my own material and call it tower. Actually, both towers are going to use the same material. I've downloaded a few weeks ago a pack of bitmaps called Sci-Fi. I don't remember where I got it from. Where is it? Sci-Fi panels. And these are amazing. Like, you have these great intricate patterns that are going to add a lot of definition to the buildings. They're from JSP. I don't know, JSP. Maybe look it up on the internet. Anyway, I'll just drop this here. And I'm gonna make this the base color. So you can start to see what is happening here. The details are coming out. So I'm gonna say Control T to have this in a box pattern. And then use the object coordinates. Now, obviously, this is going to change the scale, so we'll have to work a little bit with this. So let's try 0, 2.2. Yeah, this brings back a little bit of the details that we're looking for. Very important to use this also to create a little bit of variation in the facade. So I'm gonna say bump into the height and then normal into the normal. And I'm gonna turn the strength to something like 5. Now, I usually would not do this on a, say, close-up shot or a commercial project, for instance, because it's like the result will be terrible. But here, nobody's going to see it, so, you know, like, yeah, screw it. Too bright for me, the color. So I'm gonna mix this with a gray or something. So it's going to be a little bit darker. And maybe one thing that we can do is to turn a little bit these towers like this, yeah. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so this is called tower. Now, one thing that I did in that building is screwing with me. You see, that's the problem when you have OCD and all the other rock bands. Control L 0, and I'm gonna move this in the middle here. Great. Fantastic. So now I'm gonna take this geometry, and the goal, what I want to do here, as you have probably seen in the image that I posted on my Instagram, I gave this sort of like red highlight. Now, the idea for this little highlight came from a building that a very good friend of mine, I'll show it to you. He's an amazing photographer. I love the photography that Chris does. And so I saw this building and I thought, you know, it's really cool how they managed to put little highlights of colors into this facade. Obviously, this might have been enhanced a little bit with Photoshop, but it works in terms of composition. And Chris is a very good friend of mine. We used to work together. He's a fantastic photographer. So, you know, like, go and check out the photography that he makes because it's amazing. Look at this. It's an amazing guy. Anyway, and so I wanted to do the same thing. So let's actually do it here too. Now, in this case, I don't have the same layout as before, but let's see what we can do. So I'm gonna select this tower, and what I had to do here, I had to basically select all the faces and say right click and make trees to quads to get rid of some of the geometry that did not allow me to create sort of like bevels inside this geometry. So now I'm gonna select this whole line on the side, maybe also on top. There we go. Let's see if it spans all the way to the bottom. Control B will enlarge it a little bit. And then I'm gonna make a duplicate of the tower material, say assign. The only thing is that this time, instead of having the color, the color input inside the base color, I'm just gonna give it a red. Say assign. Let's see how it looks. It's slick. Look at that. I remember when I was a student at the University of Architecture, I made a building which had like red highlights, and it was based in downtown New York. And a girl looked at the building and she was like, this is, you know, I have to tell you, it's so insensitive because it reminds me of the Twin Towers attack and all the blood that was spilled. And I was like, yeah, that wasn't really my aim. But anyway, it's okay. Right click, trees to quads, and so let's select all the edges, Control B, and let's do the same exercise. I'm gonna put the tower material, assign it to this, and actually I have to replace this material with the tower material. There we go. So now we have the two highlights and we have the material going through. Now this image is a little bit bland if you look at it. If I now make a render. Bye Francisco, you have an amazing one. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Yeah, Dujan, Chris is amazing, and I'm glad to know that you're doing good. And so, you know, as you can see, the image is quite bland in a way because it's like, you know, the facade, it's all the same. And eventually, the one thing that I wanted to do was adding like windows and stuff, right? And so I thought, let's just use the intersections from the actual model so that, you know, we can create something a little bit more interesting to give that a little bit of life with windows. Let me select this geometry. I'm gonna stop rendering for now. And I'm gonna use the Command L to select all the faces which are inside. And I'm gonna make another tower duplicate. I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna make, first of all, I'm gonna make this a metallic material so that it's going to reflect a little bit more and it will give you the impression that there is sort of like a light, you see, coming in, because basically these elements are reflecting. But I'm also going to make it a little bit darker. There you go. So now you have a little bit more definition inside this geometry. I'll do the same with the other tower. Let me stop rendering because otherwise I cannot really see this. And let's make another material, assign. And this is basically done. I mean, the 3D work has already been done. Let me see if I can actually create a little bit of space here and there. Control L, delete the geometry, 0. It's fine. I think maybe I could lower a little bit the intensity of the sun, 0.8, and even the sky. I think that the sky is too strong, 0.1. There we go. So now we get a little bit more that effect of like dawn. Scale, make this a little bit smaller. Maybe one thing that I want to do is move the sky a little bit and make a mountain a little bit further away, a little bit taller. And this one, you know, as I told you, I was gonna cheat quite a bit on this. I'm gonna make another duplicate of the mountain, remove the green, and just have it like dark. It's not really dark, like grayish, and then maybe put it like this. Now, one thing that I would do with this, it's also to make it transparent, because if you make it transparent, it looks like it's melting into the background. But it doesn't matter, because we're gonna use a mist pass in the compositing to make it look a little bit more more interesting. So let's do. First of all, I wanna go into my camera, and then I wanna activate the depth of field and use as a object the tower. And then I'm gonna, you know, when working with such big scale, you really have to, at least in Blender, you have to go really low in the f-stop value to sort of like get a little bit more shallow depth of field. As you can see, the image seems still quite sharp for my taste. Let's try with 0.4. There are certain things that when you get to a very large scale in Blender, they simply stop working. Like for instance, the volumes. You know, I could use a volume here, but I'm not gonna do that because it simply doesn't look that good. What I'm going to do instead is use a mist pass that then I can overlay later on in what is it called, in the compositing tab. Anyway, let me just regulate now the mist pass. First of all, in the camera, I'm gonna let me see if I can find it. Depth of field, camera, safe area, viewport display. I should have a mist. Did I switch it on? Yes. It doesn't matter. I can do it also here. So the mist pass for now stops at 25 meters. This I know already that it's too little. Let's try 10,000. Where's my camera? The camera should have a switch for the mist. Camera. Custom properties, depth of field, view, mist. There you go. So now this line shows how far the mist will go. Yeah, 15,000. It's actually a good guess. Great. And it's gonna start, instead of 5, we can do 100 meters maybe. We can even go a little bit further. And that's the issue, you know, the issue is that right now we're working with such a big scale, and the camera, it's already 100 millimeters, 110, the focal length. So that's what I was telling you about the shallow depth of field, is that, you know, Blender is going to struggle to sort of like replicate the real life effect of this effect. Oh, sorry, I've seen that there are some messages. Hey Alejandro, thank you very much. Yesterday I went out with a friend and he was like, yeah, everybody knows that you're a shitty artist. It broke my heart. So I appreciate your nice messages. Okay, let me put this back and let's try and render and let's see what happens. So I'm gonna render this image. Now I'm using very low passes, like only 100 samples, but you know, Blender does a really good job at rendering, and it has become really fast. And if you have a nice graphic card, you know, you will render in no time. Like this render took 8 seconds, and for 100 passes, I think it's okay. Like it looks good. As far as I'm concerned, it's a little bit too crowded, and we could add a little bit more definition, but it's okay. It doesn't really matter. A few things. So the mountains are a little bit too prominent. I don't like that. So I'm gonna select the material and sort of like blend it with the color, but the color needs to be lighter. There you go. And then another thing that I want to do is that I want to add some details like I did in my image. You see like these antennas and pipes, because I don't know, it makes it look a little bit more interesting. So I'm gonna put my cursor on this geometry and say Control A, cylinder, scale Z, scale it up. There we go. And I'll do the same, scale up, and then scale down so that the circumference gets a little bit smaller. I'm gonna move this somewhere around here. I think it's a nice position. Let's see. Yeah, great. It doesn't really matter that, you know, it intersects. We don't really care. Shift D to duplicate. Should have gotten a glass of water. Been talking for an hour. And then Control Shift R to repeat the last command. Then I can select all of these elements and sort of like align them with my geometry. There we go. And so one thing that I can do now is basically move these things up and down. There you go. This makes it look already a lot more interesting. Like if I show you a preview, maybe the only thing that it's missing is a material. So let's give it the tower material. And I'm gonna select all the other pieces. Control L, link materials, and now all the materials are applied. And this looks, yeah, it's okay. I like it. Let me select all the geometry and then Shift D to sort of like copy it to the other tower. I'm gonna turn it 180 degrees so that it looks a little bit different. Yeah, that's good enough, but I'm gonna push this down so that you can actually see. I'm gonna move this also down. There we go. And another thing that I want, ooh, I like that they're coming out here. Okay, we'll do that. Scale it up. Ooh, this is nice. Okay, then I'll make another copy. Make it here. Let me see. GZ. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. Are they coming through? No, I think this is just a artifact. Another thing that we can do is add little antennas here and there. Mesh, cylinder, scale in the Z direction, S to make it smaller, and then we can place them on top of like some buildings. I'll just give them the roof material, which, by the way, I should actually make a lot darker. There we go. And now these antennas, I can actually move them around to other places. Control D, put it down. There you go. Yeah, that's good enough. This is the kind of stuff that makes you waste a lot of time, but it's okay. View, let me change this to perspective. Let me move it to a tower somewhere. So we got a couple of antennas there. Yeah, of course, that one you're not gonna see it. Great. Then I move this one there. Probably it's going to be floating in the air somewhere. As long as it's in the back, I'm okay. Yeah, that's fine. No, this one is just floating in the air. It's a super antenna. One of those Starlinks from Elon Musk. Great. 0. Now let me hit the render button. Render image. Hi Rustom. I never know if your name is Rustom or Tamayo. Can you clarify this? And so, you know, like, we're almost ready, I think, you know, like, maybe, you know what? Maybe another cool thing would be to have sort of like another of this, but in that direction. And so I'm gonna put it like this inside the building, and then we could have some copies. And let me put this to local so that we can move them around and maybe even scale them. So now I have these antennas as well. I don't know, it looks like it's okay. We'll take that. Let me render this and let's see what happens. File, save. Ooh, I didn't save this. Okay, I called the first one Cyber Bronx, but then I put the mountains, and so I was like, it's not really the Bronx anymore. But we're gonna call Cyber Bronx 2, save Blender file, render image. Yeah, I like it, you know, it's good enough. We'll keep it that way. Great. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put this on the side. I'll keep it open here so that you can see real time what it is that I'm doing. And then I'm gonna use the Compositing tab. I'm gonna say use nodes. And then there are a few things that we can do to enhance a little bit the image. First of all, I'm going to mix my image with a color, in this case white, but I'm going to use the mist as a factor. And so just by doing this, you can see that the image is already getting that depth that it was missing because of the lack of like an environment fog, right? I can correct this a little bit, change maybe a little bit of blue so that you get a little bit more of atmospheric mist to it. I need to wrap it up because in 12 minutes I have a call with a client. They're in America, I'm in Switzerland. That's the downside of having to deal with that side of the world. But anyway, we'll do that. And then one thing that I do is lens distortion, there you go. I'm gonna say fit, and then I'm gonna distort it. This is a little bit too much. Simply like 0.1 with 0.1 of dispersion, because like dispersion is what gives it this chromatic aberration, so to say. 0.1, it's still too much, so I'm gonna keep it very, very light. There we go. So you see it that it's somewhere on the side. Yes, it's Cyber Colorado. That's a great name to give it. Okay, so now I'm ready with the image. I'm happy with what I have here, so I'm gonna say save. New main image block out. Let's call it Cyber Colorado. I'm gonna go into Photoshop, say open, Cyber Colorado, where is it? There you go. And usually when I work in post-production, I don't do a lot of things. The only thing that I do is put a brightness and contrast layer. In this case, it's only like contrast that I'm missing a little bit. If I make it too bright, it's not good. And then I'm gonna give it a Nick Collection Analog FX Pro 2. I'll take a second to load. Usually I always use just the camera 5 preset. Still loading. Camera 5, there we go. Okay. And I simply lower the opacity, something like 20%, just so that you get a little bit more texture on the picture, as you can see. And then another thing that I want to do in this case, because this is such a big image, I'm going to paint a little bit of fog. I have some fog brushes that I've downloaded from Brushizi. And all you have to do, you put them on a new layer, and then you paint like where you think you need clouds. There you go. I only use one because I've noticed that if I do more, like it becomes really crowded. And then of course, the only thing that you have to do is lower the opacity to the point where it's not that visible anymore. And it's a subtle effect, but you know, it works. And then the last thing that I do is I put a sharpener, so a sharpen filter, which also takes a second, but as you can see, like it makes things a lot sharpen, as you can see in the bottom corner. So I'm gonna click OK, but I'm going to mask this, and I'm gonna invert the mask. Then I'm gonna use a normal brush to sort of like with a white brush. There you go. To sort of like bring back some of this detail so that, you know, your eye rests in the right place over the image. There you go. And you gotta be careful not to overdo it, but I think it's fine. And that's it. The image is finished. Let me bring back my big face. I hope that you guys learned something. The competition is still running. Thanks a lot again to our friends at RedVertex for sponsoring this and for making this possible. Go and download the assets. Take part in the competition. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I hope to see your submission soon so that, you know, we can make this the best competition to date. Yes, I'm going to use a Dutch name. I'm gonna be called Van der Render. It's a silly thing. Anyway, guys, I want to wish you a fantastic day. Thanks a lot for watching this. I really need to jump into another call in 7 minutes. Thanks a lot for all the love. Oh, 10 likes. I didn't even ask you to like the video. No, not Anna Banana. But yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Please make sure that you enter the competition. It's for free. There are a lot of advantages to take part in this competition. There will be prizes to be won, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And then we are going to do the live judging during the Christmas holiday. So I expect this to be a lot of fun. Anyway, I gotta log out. I give you all a big digital kiss, and we'll talk soon. Bye bye. Thanks a lot. Bye, Dusan. Bye, Rustam. Bye, Alejandro. Bye, everybody who's watching.